I don't know why it's skew. Let's try and fix this. Okay, looks like we're doing an upright one. My phone won't rotate. Don't know what's going on there. I would love to rotate this thing. Not working. Oh well. Just some technical issues here. Okay, hopefully that balances. All right, hello. If anybody's there, it looks like there's 2 people in the chat. Let me know if the quality of the sound is acceptable. Can you hear me all right? And if you have any questions, you want to say hello, just pop it in the chat. I've got the chat open on my laptop, so if I'm looking away the whole time, that is why. Let's see if anybody joins us. It's quite a impromptu live. Yeah, I've had a couple of people requesting that I try to get it right with different time zones, and I will try to do that at some point. Yeah, I might start scheduling like a weekly live or something like that, but at the moment, I just I do enjoy doing it quite spontaneously. If I've just got some time, just pop on, see if anybody wants to chat. Anybody has any questions? Anybody wants to do some meditation? So, yeah, I'm welcome to ask anything, and I'll hang around for a bit. yeah, if no one has any questions, then we may as well do some meditation. That's always good. So I'll wait for a bit, see if anybody else joins. Anybody else has anything to say, feel free to go ahead and say it. Yeah, so I'll wait a bit, otherwise may as well do a meditation. Yeah, let's see. Hey Jay, thanks for asking a question. Did I experience any anxiety before this in your life? Yeah, I definitely had a lot of experience with anxiety. Do you mean before, like the whole long COVID chronic illness, before recovery? Because during the long COVID, anxiety was a big part of a lot of the symptoms. To be honest, I'd say it was like one of the underlying causes of the whole thing was, you can call it like the stress response system, like a fear tone, anxiety before long COVID. Okay, yeah. I mean, if you'd asked me at the time, I probably wouldn't have said so, but looking back from here, yeah, I think I definitely did actually quite a lot. And that's why I often say that this whole thing wasn't just because of some virus. That was like a maybe like the last straw, on top of a whole lot of build-up of emotional repression, anxious patterns, a lot of that kind of stuff. So I think that was, yeah, it was all of the stuff from beforehand. A lot of being in the head, constant go, 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 not stopping to feel what I need to feel. And yeah, social anxiety, like feeling really uncomfortable in a lot of social situations, getting stressed quite easily. Yeah, like I was really always quite uncomfortable in social situations, like always feeling like, what's wrong with me? Everybody else seems to be able to navigate this social matrix a lot better than me. And yeah, looking back, it was all thoughts, and believing of those thoughts. And then obviously there was stuff going on in the body as well, like it was like the discomfort of not being in touch with the emotions. So like really pushed up into the head, and then just the more wound up you get in thoughts, the more uncomfortable it gets. So I've said it before, like this whole stopping and beginning to reassess everything that was caused by like chronic illness was really important. Really, the best thing that could have happened to me. Like brutal, but yeah, it was a natural thing that needed to happen, and it was going to happen because of how much stuff there was repressed, and then it just it plays out in maybe like trauma in the body, or and then combine that with COVID, and then like a couple of symptoms, and then that was just like the match. So yeah, anxiety was a big part of before, during, yeah. Hey, Dweller, welcome to the live. Glad to have you. I'm good. I'm good. How are you doing? All right. How's recovery going? Ups and downs? That's the path. That's it. Not much else to do. Cool. How's the meditating been going? Mm. Those uh, those can be the important ones, the tough ones. Um, yeah, nice. Yeah, I mean that's the thing with meditation is you can do it all the time. Just feeling into your present experience. So, and going out in a situation that can feel kind of challenging is a great place to become more present. What is so challenging or what is uncomfortable in this situation? Um, so yeah, doing it in public, in social situations. I mean, you don't have to like formally be meditating, but in a social interaction, like, why does this feel uncomfortable? Noticing when you're getting up in your thoughts, self-conscious thoughts, like, what is this person thinking about what I'm saying? What are you thinking about that person? And then just noticing, oh, those are all thoughts. Like, let's get into the more visceral experience of what's happening, like the bodily sensations. Um, yeah, especially if anybody struggles with like social anxiety or just feeling really uncomfortable in social situations, which even if some people don't, um, yeah, yeah, and like what I found helpful when I was exiting my meditation cave in my apartment and going out into the real world again, it was quite a change. Um, but it was like intensely curious, like what like coming into contact with someone like, whoa, there's like a strong emotional sensation. So like when you're up in the head, that will be like labeled as like social anxiety. What's wrong with me? Why do I feel so uncomfortable? Um, when you start to become more aware of thoughts as thoughts, you just realize that there's a strong like emotional uh, charge or sensation just coming into contact with another human being, and just like getting really curious about it, just like what is that? And there's often so much resistance to it. It's like, oh, I don't want to feel that. I want to get up in the head, um, and that's just our natural tendency as well. It's just to start thinking. So yeah, it can be really, really powerful, and that's often that's the stuff wherever there's strong resistance. That's a great place to just feel, and work through what's there. So yeah, good on you doing it out in public. But yeah, it obviously helps if you've been doing a bit of meditation yourself already, so you've become more aware of thoughts, or um, yeah, someone's never meditated before, you're going to be up in the head a lot. Depending, a lot of people are just generally more present in the body, but not myself. Yeah, yeah, I'd say it's something like that, Jay. Um, well, initially I'd say it's something like that, but then after everything I've been through, it's like this was like this intense suffering was such a blessing, because like if I just had like a half decent life, let's say, like growing up, and life's okay but not that happy, but just kind of get on with things, I would never have really questioned the things I did and inquired into things that I did in the way that led to such a different experience, and realizing that one can get under the mechanisms of suffering in thought, the things that make life, like a lot of people, like the suffering can sound like a strong word. So in Buddhism, they say life is suffering, but you can just say like not being satisfied with how your life is at the moment. And a lot of people can, just kind of find themselves in that place for a long time. But for me, because life was just so rough, there was only one way, and that was to like go to the root of the suffering and do these real powerful inquiry practices into going inward and that kind of stuff. So yeah, looking back now, it was like it was always going to happen, just because it was this build up, and it needed to. Yeah, then COVID was like just another thing in the snowball. I don't know if that makes any sense, but it's like how the mind was labeling it then is very different. It was all just labels, that kind of thing. Like if you want to talk about the trigger, it was like the life or the body saying stop, like you can't run from this shit anymore, you're going to face it. In some sense, you could explain it like that. So as you said, it can be virus, trauma, tragedy. Just like stops you in your tracks. And yeah. So yeah, let me know if anybody has any questions, or if you want me to talk about any specific aspect of anything, we can do that. If anybody wants to do some meditation, we can do that. I'm open with anything. So yeah, it doesn't look like there's a lot of people. I think it says there's 4 and 1 is my laptop. So probably why I should announce these a little further in advance, give people a bit more warning. a good question, Dweller. So my journey wasn't very linear. I was a lot of the time trying things and then falling back and trying pacing again and resting. So like when I was going downhill and doing less and less and less, the kind of what I was doing in those moments was, living at home, and then I'd try to get out for like a 5-10 minute walk in the morning and the evening. So I wasn't like completely bedbound. But then, yeah, eventually then I started to try to do things again, but wasn't really ready. But I was kind of pushing myself. It's difficult to remember the timeline of things. But what eventually happened was I moved to live on my own, so that was like a big change. I was going to the shops, I was cooking, I wasn't going out and exercising much or seeing people or that, but and I was having lots of flare-ups. But it was important for me to live on my own for a bit, and then what I was mostly doing was going for walks and trying to walk for longer, and sometimes I'd walk for quite long, and then it would be quite a big flare-up afterwards. And honestly, like in those periods, I wouldn't say I was making a lot of progress. I was kind of, but it was really up and down. And it was only when I really started meditating a lot that the body calmed a lot, and it gave me. It's like what happened is I stopped looking for an out. I was like, I'm just gonna go in here, and I realized how powerful, like powerful or like that became more important than recovery, in a sense. And then I was still, slowly doing more with exercise, but it was very up and down for quite a while until, I really committed myself to meditation. But I would say, like, listening, like being, as I've said in other videos, like being authentic with yourself, as like I knew when I was distracting myself, kind of like that part of me knew, but I wasn't always attuned to that. And like going down roads that weren't gonna get me out of this, like I tried to start studying again. I did like one course online because there was so much fear about my future. It's been a year. I'm still not studying, so I tried to do a course online, and it went all right. But like I had to completely focus on the things that felt like they were working the most. So like giving up on trying to live a normal life, basically, because it was like this half and half. It was like I need to get my old life back in some way, or how am I gonna cope in the future, and all this fear and stuff. And then that's why I said like letting go of all of that, just like completely embracing my situation, and then it all just kind of started to come together when I was like no longer trying to fight the whole process. It was like, okay, like I'm stuck on my own. I'm gonna meditate. I'm gonna feel the shit I need to feel. I'm gonna stop wishing I had more social interactions. I'm gonna stop wishing I had like the normal life and just go deep with this. And then by doing that, I was then able to start to do more. But I had to first almost like give up and really stop fighting it, and really just like do what felt most important to me. And then like I was reading a lot of books that were really helpful, and not a lot of books, but like one or two, and then came across the right teachers at the right time. And then then I was able to. Then I started pushing myself more, and then there were still lots of flare-ups. Like I remember going for like a walk the one time, and I was maybe doing like 20-minute walks at the time, and I was just like, fuck it. And I went for like a 2-hour walk, like up a big hill, and it felt awesome while I was doing it. And then afterwards, I had a massive flare up. So I was doing that kind of thing. But then by sitting with what I needed to sit, like it wasn't as bad next time. And yeah, I was really just like giving into the process. And then when the time was right, I could start to. But like for a long time, I wasn't trying to reintegrate anymore. It was like almost like I had to embrace the isolation aspect. It's like I'm separate from the world. And then when it was time, like when I became too comfortable with that, but I was ready for it. And you're not always going to know when you're ready for it. Like maybe a part of you will know, but a part of you will be like, no, I'm not ready for it. But then eventually I went moved back home to go visit my family, and then kind of just started getting back into life again. And then letting go of that isolated meditative life in the cave of my apartment. So that's kind of just like how it went for me. But yeah, I was like really committing to the things that I knew I needed to focus on. And then I also went on a meditation retreat, which was at the time a big like stepping out of what felt like I was comfortable and able to do. But it had, and it was, lots of ups and downs after that, but it helped to get me more able to meditate more and just like go deeper, I suppose. It was a really good experience. Yeah, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Self-compassion. I was going to make a video about that soon. Like specifically, that was one of the meditation practices that I was doing a lot, and it really soothed the body. It's just like cultivating a feeling of compassion and warmth and love in the body. So like sitting with that. I'll answer Jay's question now, but yeah, sitting with like doing that in the morning and in the evening, and then I would sleep so well as opposed to being all up in the head. It was like being in especially like focusing on sensations in the center of the chest, like at the heart, and then sitting with that and letting that like spread, and then also like like I've spoken a little bit about with emotion work, you can actually like talk to the emotions in a sense, just to like cultivate a certain response, and you can do that with the sensations as well, just working with that. So that was really powerful for me, really, like that had a huge impact, because then the body really relaxed, and then I would just start to feel a lot better. So yeah, if you're pushing yourself and things are flaring up and you're having symptoms, like meditating, but specifically in a compassionate way, is really powerful. Yeah, it's I think a lot of people are like that. Okay, Jay, would you say that pacing keeps people stuck in the long term? Can you talk about your experience with this? Yeah, that's a really good question, and it was really relevant to me because, yeah, I did get stuck with that. Absolutely, like because that was the only approach, this like fear-based approach that I learned about online. That you got to avoid symptoms, you got to avoid crashes, you got to just rest and get to a stable baseline, and then build it up from there or something like that. Like that's probably the most recommended approach specifically for like ME, chronic fatigue syndrome. So that was the only thing I knew to do, and then also some extreme diets. So I was doing that, but and I think like a certain like orientation towards pacing in the sense of like gently pushing yourself is important, but so many people are way too. It's just so much fear around symptoms and avoiding symptoms. So yeah, I got stuck like that, where I was trying so hard to pace and avoid crashes and like build myself up without having crashes until it just kept on happening and kept on happening. And I was trying to follow these really rigid like activity schedules. So like do something and like say it's 15 minutes of activity, then rest for half an hour afterwards, and do something for an hour, then rest for 2 hours after. It's like a 1-2-2 activity to rest kind of thing. So like trying to plan out my entire day, but it was so much trying to control my experience when I couldn't. But I think it was good because I had to try so hard to control until I realized I couldn't, and I got and there were like good aspects of it that I was learning to incorporate, sitting with myself, and it was like maybe before I was meditating a lot, I was trying to do these rest, but it was so much about control. Like I remember I'd do an activity and I would feel like symptoms coming up or discomfort coming up, and then it would be so much fear like, okay, should I have to rest now until that's gone because otherwise I'm going to have a big crash. So I think like the general approach to pacing is really can keep people stuck. And for me, it was when I gave up on that, on such a rigid approach. And I guess like you could say, in the end, what I was doing was a form of pacing, like, but it wasn't like trying to control experience so much as doing a certain level of activity and then feeling into the body at what arose, but not with all this fear of oh no, I've done too much, I have to rest, otherwise I'm going to crash and get worse. It was more like I'm pushing myself, stuff's going to come up, and that is good. Like I'll say, one of the people ask me a lot about brain retraining programs, and I'm always on the fence. I mean, I'm not really, because it did help, definitely, but I eventually had to go past that because even that, like the pacing, like you can get stuck in the rigid approach depending on what program you do. Like it's somebody sharing how they recovered, and it's their approach. But what it did help me with a lot was like giving me the idea that bringing on symptoms was a necessary part of the recovery process. So realizing that do something, bring on symptoms, and it was a complete opposite like response or like mindset to what I'd had when I was pacing and so stuck. Where there it was like if you bring on symptoms, that's bad and you're going to get worse. It was now I knew I needed to face the symptoms, and actually when symptoms come up, it's like that's a good thing. Let's work with this. This is where the recovery happens, is when the symptoms come up, and sit with it. And then I'll always emphasize like that doesn't mean you have to put on this fake positive mindset of symptoms come up, this is cool, I'm feeling good, keep pushing myself, like whatever comes up is okay. So if symptoms come up and there's a strong fear to the symptoms, like oh no, I've done too much, then that's okay. Like that's what you work with, whatever comes up. So yeah, whether it's fear, that's why I say authenticity is so powerful. Like just be 100% honest with what you're feeling in each moment, and don't try and pretend it's otherwise, and don't try and fight it. If it's fear, it's fear. It's like, that's fine. It's all about resistance. It always comes back to that. It was like, first I was resisting symptoms with the rigid pacing and that, and then I learned that symptoms were important, but then there's fear of the symptoms that would come up, or thoughts about the symptoms. And then it's easy to, that's where I say I had to go past the brain retraining programs, because then you can get stuck in resisting negative thoughts and emotions. Like, oh no, the brain retraining is all about positive response or whatnot. So yeah, that's a long answer to your question on pacing. Yeah, then we're talking about self-compassion, and I was exactly the same before this whole thing. As I said, because of like anxiety and social anxiety, there was like such a strong belief that there's something wrong with me. I'm fucked up. Like there was a lot of like just yeah, it was a lot of like emotional repression, like not being willing to feel it, and then in the thoughts, it was all about like self doubt and um, not not having much compassion as well. So that was a big part of the journey. Um, and yeah, like there's what's cool is there's specific practices you can do, like meditation kind of stuff where you can just um, like practice self compassion. It's powerful. Um, it can just be like cultivating a feeling of love. Like I would just sit there and even say to like whatever was there, like a sensation. As I said, I would feel into the sensations in the chest and just say like, I love you, like, and try to say it as emotionally, like if I was talking to, like, say a loved one or whatever, like, can I convey this with as much love and emotion as possible, and then like keep on um, cultivating that feeling, and then doing that with anything, a strong emotion, a symptom you don't want to feel. It's so powerful. Or, hi, welcome to the live stream. Did you have any vagus nerve techniques as part of your recovery? Um, yeah, I mean, I used to, in like the middle stages of my recovery, I was really focused on those kind of things, um, breath work, vagus nerve stuff. Like, but that was all when I was really so much trying to control my recovery process. Like, I need to fix this. Um, it was like I was talking now with the pacing, where like I'd feel like I'm in a hyper alert state, and now I need to do something to calm my vagus nerve. And it would help to an extent, but the thing is like I just you don't have control of. You can't force yourself to be calm. It was more just about feeling. So what I was just saying now about when I more just started meditating and becoming like accepting and just willing to feel, and kind of what I was just saying about compassion, like just whatever comes up, learn to uh, meet it with love and welcome it and feel it. And the more you do that, you realize it's not a problem with what's arising. It was the resistance to what was arising. So I see Jay says a similar thing there. Um, my experience with these techniques was that I was always trying to do these to feel better or getting rid of symptoms. That was exactly the same for me. So sure, it would sometimes help, but I just couldn't get it right. It was like I had to fail at all of these things. It was like, yeah, I'm gonna do all these vagus nerve practices and all of that to fix myself, but I couldn't until I just was like, okay, I surrender. Like I just got to feel it. I can't make it go away. I have to feel it. Yeah. But I mean, one thing I did do a lot of was like cold swimming, because it was something I was doing before I got sick, and then the fear when I was reading on all chronic fatigue syndrome, everyone was like, "What? That's way too much stimulation for the nervous system. It's going to make you crash. It's going to make you worse." So I stopped doing it, and then eventually, once my understanding of everything changed, I was doing a lot of cold swimming, which would help a lot. And I know it does have a link with the vagus nerve and activating the parasympathetic nervous system. But I think what was helping me with the most was learning to embrace uncomfortable sensations and like yeah, so just the cold swimming was something I did a lot, and it was also it helps a lot with like brain fog and getting out of the head. So going into like really cold water, even just a cold shower, you get into the sensations of the body because you don't have much choice. Like really cold water, you just like straight into the body, and then it was such a like good intense practice of surrendering to the sensations as opposed to being up in the head and fighting it. So that's just something that helped. It was like a more practical thing that I found quite helpful. Hey, Aaron, welcome to the live stream. Um, I think that the symptom that I have the hardest time sitting with is chest discomfort, heart palpitations, because there's always that nagging thought in the back of my head that wonders, should I be sitting with this or should I be heading to the hospital? Like I wonder if I'm playing Russian roulette with my health at that point. Um, yeah, I totally understand what you're referring to there. Um, yeah, so I had a lot of experience with that early on, like when I was, often talk about my journey in like the downhill phase, and the uphill sounds like it's, well, it was like an uphill recovery, but like coming out of it. And in the downhill phase, it was all fear about symptoms and closing off my life and stuff. And I remember like lying in bed, and this was when I didn't know much what was going on before I started researching chronic illness and stuff. It was just all this these weird symptoms, and there's strong sensations in the chest, and like I had so much fear around it. Like, should I go to the hospital? Because there was sometimes get these sharp pains in my chest as well. Like there's this weird random sharp pain in my chest, and there was so much fear. But eventually, so like always want to say, like I'm sharing what worked for me here, but I'm not a doctor. I can't give people medical advice. So I don't want to say to somebody, oh, it's just a sensation. Like just feel into it. Um, and maybe there's something that need to get checked out. But I will say this: so eventually, like I went and got a whole bunch of tests done and checked, and there was no problem with my heart or my lungs or my no like underlying condition, not like heart inflammation or anything like that. So yeah, then I was like, there was it was like, okay, there's this mysterious illness, like what's causing all these symptoms and that kind of stuff. So if you haven't gotten something checked out, I'll always recommend that, just to make sure there's not like an actual physical problem there. Like I don't know, as I said, I'm not a doctor, but something wrong with your lungs or your heart or something. But if you've been for tests and there's nothing wrong, which I feel like is the case for a lot of people with chronic fatigue syndrome and long COVID, is it's not some organ failure or problem with a specific organ or something like that. It's more like a neurological. It's difficult to, like, I don't have the correct labels for it, but I know for me it was like nervous system kind of vibes. Um, so yeah, that's like one part. But I will say, like, that is one of the most difficult sensations. Um, it's yeah, it's difficult to sit with, like, just completely out of the context of chronic illness now. Like for me, it's now all about just feeling into the body when I don't want to feel into it. I'm just feeling into my own resistance patterns, like not to do with chronic illness anymore. Like it's not symptoms or anything. It's I mean, that's the funny thing, is it's the labels. So like back when I was in the story of my chronic illness, I would experience tightness in the chest or contraction in the chest as a symptom, whereas now I know it's just like some resistance pattern or something. But I will say those are often the most difficult to deal with. Like if there's pain in my foot or something, um, it's like, okay, I can feel into that. Like that's pain. Pain's just intense sensation. Um, or if I'm doing stretches or something, there can be a strong pain. But when it's in the chest, it can be really difficult to sit with. So um, yeah, I mean, I would recommend sitting with it, but as I said, first check out that it's not something physical. But as I said, for a lot of people, it's not. And then I would just do those practices of self compassion and welcoming it. And what I used to do is like I originally got it from a guided meditation, but it was like making space for, like, can I, like, I was like, it was meditating, and then can I make enough space for whatever needs to be here, and generally then going to what was the most difficult part of my present experience, and just again like try and shower that with love and welcome and acceptance. And then if it's fear, so as I said, like if you get it checked out and it's not a problem, then it's fear that you're dealing with as well. So then it's like, okay, there's the sensation in the heart that's difficult to feel, and then there's the fear of that, and then there's the thoughts, and it's like, can you welcome all of that? So it's not just the sensation. Can you welcome the fear that comes with it? And yeah, just compassion and like it's difficult. It's difficult work. Yeah, so I did experience that kind of fear early on, but yeah, just sit with it when you can, as much as you can. Um, can I just feel into this fear for, start with like 2 minutes or 5 minutes, and then it's such a powerful practice. It's like what I do nowadays is, can I find the thing that I want to feel the least and go straight towards it? And it's like a really good teacher that I've listened to said like, there's no monster in the closet, but you have to go into the closet and look to see that. So there's all these things we're resisting that we don't want to feel, that we're terrified of. But if we actually go straight towards the thing we're pushing away, it's and can just welcome it and like completely give into it. It's there's nothing actually there. It was all our tangle with not wanting to feel that. That was the whole uncomfortable but you have to do it to see that. You can't just listen to other people talk about it and form a belief around like, okay, there's some really uncomfortable thought or sensation or emotion that I don't want to feel, and I know that there's nothing there. It's fine, but no, you have to just like give into it and feel it completely, and then see what happens. But I will say this, like it's worth it, and yeah, it's the best thing you can do if it's something you don't want to feel is to feel it as much as you can. So it was actually the quote, a conversation that Angelo had with another spiritual teacher, Gangaji. It was like a recent interview he did, and it was what Gangaji said. I think she said, yeah, something like that. Like, there's no monster under the bed or in the closet, but you have to open every single door before you can actually realize that. Like you have to look everywhere and go to open every door you don't want to open, and then you'll see there's nothing there. And it really resonated. It was like it was at a time when I was maybe having quite a lot of resistance to sitting and meditating. Like I got quite busy over the last few months, and I wasn't meditating a lot. And then I just started doing that, and it was just diving into that resistance. Hi Richard, welcome to the live stream. Thanks for your videos. They're a source of comfort right now, and it's awesome that you're prepared to give up your time to help like this. I love it, Richard. You're welcome. Yeah, I just there's so much like, how do you put it, stuff out there that can really help people form these beliefs that they're not going to recover, and I know that's not true. So I just want to share what worked for me, because I found that other people's accounts of what worked for them so helpful. So I do really enjoy doing this. So you're very welcome. Awful symptoms is when I extend my activities, I tend to wake in the night and morning with panic sensations. The next day or days, it's the hardest one for me to deal with, as it catches me while I'm most vulnerable. Yes, I can definitely relate to what you're saying there, Dweller. So it's something I experience even now, not in exactly that same context, but often the resistance can feel strongest when I wake up in the morning, because then you're straight up into the thoughts, like you a little bit disorientated, and you wake up and there's so much resistance. So Yeah, it can happen, and it can be like an energetic thing as well. Like uh, there can just be this really so like when I was in this chronic illness identity, or like brain fog was like this mysterious symptom, but the it's what I found it actually is. It's just like this a lot of energy up in the thoughts in the head, and it can be really uncomfortable. Um, and it's just something that comes and goes. So, like that's kind of my experience of what you're talking about. Is wake up in the morning and, in the past it could be like brain fog or like panic sensations, that kind of thing, like strong resistance sensations. Um, and the best I would say, just as personally, is like grounding practices can work quite well. So trying to get into the body, get into uh, like even or just like lie on the floor on like a yoga mat or something and just feel into the sensation of contact between the floor and the body, and that would bring me out of the like panic sensations in the head. But I would say it's something I know a lot of people have experienced, and it's just something that comes and goes. Um, so again, don't fight it. I mean, it can be really uncomfortable and scary, but just realize that it's like, okay, this is happening right now. Waking up, this is how I feel, um, and yeah, do what just try to ground yourself in the body, um, and feel. And as you said, go outside, sit in nature. That can be incredibly grounding. And it's just something that will come and go. It passes through. I had, even after I was fully recovered, as I said, just then it was just like tension and stuff in the body, and I'd wake up and sometimes be so up in the head, and like, um, that kind of thing. But it's just something you have to experience. Yeah. Yeah, as you say, Dweller, it's something that does get better, and it's, as I said, it's just something that comes and goes. Like again, like, can we let go of the label of symptom? Like, this is a symptom, and what this symptom means is I'm regressing, I'm going back to a crash or something, and it's just something that's passing through. That can be difficult, but it's the story we tell ourselves about the symptoms that can be the most debilitating. And again, it's the beliefs that form and that kind of thing. So just notice the narrative that starts to play when you wake up in the morning and you feel these panic sensations, and just notice the narrative that the thoughts say, like, oh, this means this means this, and just be like, notice that. That's fine. But can you drop that? Can you just okay, this is happening, like, it will come and go. And it's difficult, but it's worth it. Yeah, Jay experienced it as well, and it's just something that comes and goes. um, yeah, Erin as well, it's temporary. Breathe through it. Absolutely. Absolutely. Hey, Kovic, welcome to the live stream. Nice to have you. I am fully recovered from ME, chronic fatigue syndrome, long COVID. Um, yeah, I for a couple of months, probably since November 2022, was kind of when I was just reintegrating with lives, and reintegrating with life and starting to do things again. And um, yeah, I started exercising full on, and playing a lot of sport, and working full time, and eating whatever. And then eventually, after like a month or two of that, it was just all the beliefs that were keeping me stuck were completely gone. It was like, um, I know there's no illness anymore. Um, Kovic, go ahead if you have a question. Go ahead. Yeah, Dwella, yeah, I mean, forums, it's so difficult. Come across so many forums that are really um, just bring people down. I kind of just stopped using forums, but like I know there's a couple of people that try to start positive related forums, but I just eventually just took this thing on my own. Um, but yeah, like this is a kind of group interaction, so we can do these lives, and yeah, you can always link up with people. But yeah, I always found forums difficult. Yeah, Kovic. So this is something I've spoken about a bit in that, um, like flare-ups were a big part of my recovery journey. So um, it's like doing movement and then you have a flare-up. It's not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, it can be really difficult and uncomfortable, but it doesn't mean you've made a massive mistake and it's a bad idea. Like it's really um, it's a personal thing that you got to work with yourself. Like I don't want to tell people to push themselves, but I will say that you can't avoid um, the flare ups that are going to happen. Like it's the avoidance of flare ups that can keep you stuck. So when I was recovering, I was implementing things, uh, doing things that I knew would trigger symptoms, and then there wasn't always complete acceptance of the flare-ups. There was a lot of fear and like, oh no, I've done too much. But I learned more and more to sit with um, the symptoms, and I was talking about it earlier, to welcome the symptoms, and yeah. So if it feels good to move and slowly expand your horizons, I'd say that's an important part of recovery. And then if there's a flare up, that's okay. It's not like the word crash is often gives off the sense that it's over. We've ruined it. Um, we've done too much. We've got to start from scratch again. So slowly pushing the boundaries, I think, is important. I know if you start to do a lot way too soon, it can just be overwhelming to try and work with. But yeah, I would say the flare up is a normal part of the recovery process. And I'll even go so as far as to say is that we need to experience those flare ups to recover, um, in the sense that we need to face the things that uh, we're afraid of. Um, so for me, like learning to sit with the symptoms um, and accept them, but also like doing this with other things that would calm the body, like meditation, um, made it easier. Otherwise, it is very difficult to deal with. Um, like before I started meditating a lot, I was before I started meditating a lot, I was pushing myself and I was getting flare ups, and then it can be so easy to get caught up in the beliefs of no, I'm not going to get better. This is too uncomfortable. I don't want to sit with it. So meditating a lot and then pushing myself slightly, and maybe a slight flare up occurred, but then learning to sit with what came up in that flare up. That was what worked for me. Um, yeah, that's good advice, Dweller. Like do something that brings on symptoms to a level that you can handle them. So like that's where pacing is still helpful in that you're pushing yourself, you're bringing on symptoms. You know that it's okay to bring on symptoms, but just do what you can handle. I'd say that's as long as they're with your capacity to work with them. Hey JC, nice to have you here. Thank you for your videos. It helps a lot. Unfortunately, 3 weeks ago, I got sick again. Was at about 90% there, but I'm definitely going with your approach this time. I'm glad the videos are helpful. Sorry to hear that you got sick again. And yeah, I'll just say that that's another thing that can be helpful to work through, is like we feel like we're almost recovered and then we get reinfected with something or whatnot. It's another thing. Like if we never go through that, then there's always going to be that fear of, I'm fully recovered now, but what if I get sick again? So it's again a part of the recovery process. That's why I say like flare-ups and crashes and those kind of things is, if they're worked with in the right manner, are the things we need to go through. So I know it's tough, and like with myself, when you feel like you've made so much progress and then you have some sort of big setback, it can be so demoralizing and scary. But what I can tell you now is those are important parts of the recovery journey. It's like getting reinfected again, and then working through the stuff you need to work through again after that. And then next time you get to 90%, you'll now know that it's okay if you get reinfected again, until there's no fear of anything anymore. I mean, and even if there's fear, that's fine. You work with that. Like if there's fear, there's fear. There's nothing wrong with fear, but there's no belief about, what is reinfection going to do to me. So that's why, like for me, the whole reintegration thing was doing every possible thing. But like eventually, just the idea of crashing didn't even make sense anymore. It was because, it was just seen that the whole mechanism that was causing that thing was gone. So, but I had to work through everything one by one. Like when I started exercising again, sometimes I pushed quite hard and then it would affect my sleep. And then there was all these fears was like, oh, I'm doing so well, but if my sleep goes wrong, maybe that will take me back, until that was worked through. And then it was like, I can have a night where I have like 3 hours of sleep and the body bounces back. The body is made to adapt and all of that. But again, that was later stages of recovery, like once I kind of worked through the stuff, and then it was just about finding every which way, until there was nothing that there was no fear of, oh, but this could still bring on a crash. It was like, that's just not even in the picture anymore. So I don't know if that helps, but reinfection. I had a couple people ask me about reinfection, and I'd say that you got to experience it and deal with what that brings up, to be able to live without the fear of reinfection. It's like the exposure. Yeah, Duela, I think that's a very common thing. I think that's one of the biggest things keeping people stuck is this extreme pacing, cutting out every aspect of life, and this fear of symptoms and doing things that can bring it on. Like that's essentially the one of the whole mechanisms keeping people stuck in these chronic illnesses is just this whole belief system about what you can and can't do and what you should and shouldn't feel and what that's going to do to you. So I think it's a very common experience. Aaron, it's incredible how when you start to meditate a lot, it can just really start to help so much with recovery. That was my experience as well. So I was also meditating like twice a day, and then the longer I started to make those sessions, like meditating for long sessions, was really powerful. And eventually that was just my response in every moment, was just to sit with what was there. And the more and more that we can do that, the more that whole fear system dies down, because it's a willingness to feel whatever comes up. It's like, okay. And it takes time. It's just keep coming back to that willingness, right? Like, you don't realize that every time that you're doing that, that it is helping you in your recovery. Like, it can feel like you're making no progress or whatever, but every time that we are willing to sit with the symptoms instead of distracting ourselves, it starts to change, and eventually it will just feel so much easier to sit with it until it kind of all starts dropping away. Dwella, yeah, fear and anxiety, like that. Fear is the whole, personally for me, was the whole mechanism of this illness. It was this whole fear thing that I needed to work through. It was almost like, if you want to take it deeper, like a fear of my own mortality, like, because I was young and fit and healthy, and now this whole thing was going on. This all had to play out, like dealing with a health issue for the first time, and it was just this big fear. And then the fear kind of, because of the avoidance of fear, it took over the like the behavioral patterns, like just everything was done out of fear. Then can't do this, fear, until there was a willingness to feel the fear. And Jay, as you say, it's all subconscious because we're resisting it. If we become aware, that's what I say with beliefs and that kind of thing, it's all just becoming aware of what's driving our behavior. Richard, I started with a lot of guided meditation. Yeah, I find it really helpful, especially if you haven't meditated much. Guided meditation is really helpful. So yeah, I was using the Waking Up meditation app. I used it a lot when I started meditating, and it's got a lot of really good guided meditations on there. So there's a lot of different meditation teachers that have like these short courses where they've got like 5 or 6 guided meditations, and there's some really good ones there that I just kept coming back to because they resonated. So then I would just sit with those meditations. Yeah, and then eventually, once I started meditating more and more, then just kind of meditating on my own. But I think combining it can be great. So guided meditation now and then sometimes just sitting with your own sensations. And then a lot of time I would do like a mindfulness meditation, focus on the breath at the nose. So just like that's the longer meditations I would do. If I sit for like 45 minutes or an hour, just putting intention on the sensations at the nose, and then noticing when there was thoughts, and then coming back to that. So doing that for my longer meditations, but then guided meditations help a lot. So yeah, there's a lot of really good ones out there. But yeah, I recommend the Waking Up app if anybody wants an app with really good guided meditations. There's some really good teachers on there. And then, as I was saying earlier in this live stream, like compassion, acceptance-based, like meditation or sitting in silence with working on accepting things in your experience and cultivating compassion to whatever you don't want to feel, and sensations in the body, and cultivating the sense of love and welcoming and kindness to whatever in there was really powerful as well. So that's again something, there's some really good compassion-based meditations on the Waking Up app that kind of introduced me to that kind of thing. And it can kind of feel weird at first if you're not used to it. Like you're almost, a great way to do the whole welcoming practice is to feel the sensation, and then to say to like this sensation, like imagine talking to the sensation and saying like, you're absolutely welcome to be here. Just accept you completely. Can I just completely meet this sensation with love and kindness and that kind of thing? That's really powerful. It was really powerful for me. So there's a lot of different kinds of meditation I would do, and I kind of keep coming back to it throughout the day. Like a short 10-minute one every now and then in the morning and evening, often a long one. So yeah. Cheers, Jesse. Thank you for joining us. Yeah, hopefully see you again on the next one. We'll see when it happens. It's still happening quite spontaneously at the moment. But I know we've got some friends in Australia that are hoping that I will do one that works with their time frame. I just often in the afternoon find myself with some free time and think, why not hop on and chat to you guys for a bit. Hey Liam, thanks for popping in. Nice to have you here. I'm well, thanks. I hope you're doing well as well. Yeah, so we can. Whoa, there goes my device. It was quite precariously balanced because I've got my earphones underneath my phone. And I was trying to tilt my phone earlier, but it wouldn't rotate. So it's very precariously balanced. Precariously. Did you tweak your diet much to recover? Yeah, Richard, diet. So kind of how I was talking about pacing with Dweller and I think it was Jay, I can't remember who earlier. I was talking about how like too much of a focus on pacing can really keep one stuck. For me, it was this really strict, rigid focus on diet that was keeping me stuck as well. It's all about fixation, really. It can be the same with sleep and anything where a certain attention towards our sleep and our diet can be helpful, but a fixation on I have to eat like this, I have to get 8 hours of sleep, I have to do this, that's really what can keep us stuck. So yeah, I mean, I got really stuck on a really strong or like a really rigid, like low histamine diet because I came across it online and it was the only thing I was seeing that was helping people with long COVID. And I was stuck on that for months because I just kept on cutting foods out to try and get better because I wasn't getting better. So I was like, I'll keep getting more strict with my diet. It's not the perfect diet yet. But eventually that was the whole thing keeping me stuck, was causing so much stress and fear about foods and whatnot. So yeah, I mean, a healthy diet, I'm sure, is helpful, but for me, it was taken way too far, and eventually just relaxing the diet and realizing that was my own fears and reactions that were causing the problem, not specific foods. And then starting to introduce foods again until I was like fully recovered and able to eat anything again. Like then even relaxing a healthy diet sometimes and eating unhealthily. And again, there was originally fears of like, oh no, I've got to eat healthy. And then just focusing on anything where there was fear and reintroducing that. So yeah, now I can, like, there's not much. I mean, I actually do follow a vegetarian diet, but that's not because of health. I mean, maybe to a certain extent, but it's more like ethical kind of reasoning. So yeah, I mean, I do follow a diet, but I'll eat unhealthily if I feel like it every now and then. But yeah, like if someone's on a really unhealthy diet, I would say, sure, like try to fix that a bit, but don't get so focused on diet that you start to fear certain foods and that kind of thing. So for me, our diet was more of a hindrance than a help for a long time. Hey, Liam, from the UK, did you have many experiences with POTS? And if so, how was your recovery alongside POTS symptoms? In my head, once I get that heart rate increase stable, I'll be living the dream again. Yeah, so yeah, as Aaron says, we were kind of talking about that kind of thing quite a bit earlier. Aaron was talking about like fears around heart palpitations and sen- uncomfortable tension and sensations in the chest. So yeah, if you when I'm done with this live, I will all the recording will be under the live section of my channel, so you can go and listen to that. But I'll quickly answer that a bit as well. So one of the things for me was like, again, it was all about addressing beliefs and fears. So there was beliefs that I had to keep my heart rate from going up really high, and if there was so much belief around heart rate. That was one of the things really keeping me stuck. So I was like hyper focused on heart rate for a long time, and it was the beliefs around it that was really the problem, and that puts the body in such a stressful state that probably drives up the heart rate too. So I see what you say there, that trigger exposures. I'd say that's a really good idea. Like that's really what I recommend is it's like just be willing to feel the fear that comes up if you notice heart rate increase. Notice the thoughts that come up, the narrative that comes up. Be willing to feel it. Okay, how does this feel in the body? Like, oh, there's fear about what this is going to mean. What are my beliefs around that? I just say, be willing to feel that. Notice that the thoughts are just thoughts, and then slowly start to expose yourself to beliefs that have formed of things that will trigger POTS symptoms or that kind of thing. Like, I can't do this. Maybe introduce a little bit of that, but do it gently. And I always recommend a lot of meditation as well, because that can make you more aware of thoughts, and at the same time it can really relax the body and give you space to work with symptoms in a sense. That's what helped me. Like, I was originally trying to work with exposure and that kind of stuff, but I was getting too much caught up in my beliefs and thoughts of like, oh, I've had a crash now, and it was so up and down. But when I started meditating a lot, it relaxed the body a lot, and then I did start introducing triggers again and starting exercising, and then noticing my fears around heart rate, and it was much easier then to work with it. So I would say, yeah, exposure therapy is great, and if you want to try some meditation or just feeling into the body and sitting with symptoms, that can really help a lot as well. Hey Rosie, welcome. Nice to have you here. How do you explain long COVID to others? I have family who generally don't understand and just think I'm lazy and depressed. Yeah, that's a tough one, especially if you've got people who are like invalidating you and that kind of stuff. It can be really tough. So, and this is an important thing as well, I think. Like, this is one of the things that drove that spiraled this whole thing into the more difficult stages for me, was trying to explain my situation to other people and trying to get other people to understand. And yeah, at the time it just felt like that's completely fair to do. But eventually I realized that it was like me looking for sympathy, and again, like as I say with so many things, like this kind of stuff had to play out for me to learn from the experience itself. That no matter how much sympathy you get from somebody else, and no matter how much they understand or don't understand your situation, it doesn't it doesn't help you. So like for me, I would often, again at the time, I wasn't thinking to myself, I'm exaggerating my symptoms, but that's just what I was doing, where you'd be feeling a certain way, and then because maybe somebody doesn't quite understand, or they think you're a bit lazy or something, and then you really try to get them to understand it, maybe you exaggerate your symptoms a bit. What that was doing for me is it was like reinforcing these beliefs and yeah, these beliefs about my own condition. And it was only when I eventually realized like this was making things worse for me. And it can be really difficult to realize that like um, as much as support from other people can help us, like um, complaining about our symptoms. I'm not saying this is what you're doing. I'm just saying this is what I was doing, complaining about symptoms and trying to get people to understand that. It's like I remember in someone's recovery story, they said like, just stop trying to get people to understand. Like no one can experience what you're experiencing. And eventually, I just gave up on that, and it was so helpful to just completely tackle this as like no one's going to save me from this, no matter how much I try to get people to understand this and like solve my story. That's what's keeping me stuck. This identity that's forming this story, this narrative. I really had to just let go of that, and yeah. So that's my experience with it. I know it's tough, especially if you're living with family who yeah, who are like bringing you down or don't believe that you're going through something really difficult. But again, like we can't control other people's reactions. Like we can try whatever we want. That's another part of it. Is it's like you can sell your, like again speaking from my own experience, like I could sell my story as much as I want, but how somebody else interprets that and what they say in response is just really going to depend on their own shit. So it's difficult. But I would say like, yeah, I mean, explain it as much as you need to, but in the end, it really doesn't matter what. I mean, it's difficult if there's practical implications, but again, we still can't control what somebody else is going to think. Um, so yeah, it's a tough one. Totally understand, and I've heard a lot of people who are stuck with in difficult situations, but yeah, again, I would just. What I started doing was just seeing it as an opportunity to work through more stuff. So like working through symptoms was one opportunity. It was like, okay, I got to work through this, and then if somebody was pissing me off, it was like, well, it was in the end realizing that, well, the reason they're pissing me off is because it's bringing up something in myself that I don't want to feel personally. Like, and I couldn't see that at the time, but eventually, the more I dug into my own stuff, um, when somebody was really getting under my skin, it was maybe because they were getting at some identity that I was holding or some belief that I was holding. So then just being willing to see in myself, what is this bringing up in myself? Like when this person does something that upsets me, it's like, well, I can't control what they do, but what is this is bringing up some resistance for me to work through. Like, why don't I want to feel what do I feel when they say that? Why don't I want to feel that? Just some of my personal experience. Everyone's situation is different and it can be tough, but that's my experience. Liam, thanks for that, mate. I'm having the up and down this past week. Done meditation today, and it definitely brought me back to peace within myself. Good to see you found it useful in the long term. Yeah, Liam, you're welcome. And yeah, there's ups and downs is a massive part of the recovery journey, and it was for me. And that's okay. Like there will be times when you got to feel some uncomfortable shit, and there'll be times when maybe you're meditating a lot and things feel a lot easier. But just being willing to, so like if we're just talking about from a meditation perspective, like people, sometimes meditation will feel great and sometimes meditation will feel really uncomfortable. And often it will feel uncomfortable when we're trying to make it a certain way, right? So, like maybe once we had it, and I'm not saying you were specifically talking about meditation, but this is just coming to mind. Like we were, maybe you once have a really peaceful meditation, and then next time it's not so peaceful, but then it's such an uncomfortable meditation because we're trying to make it into a peaceful meditation. So in a similar sense, I'd say the recovery journey is like that as well. Like there'll be ups and downs, and sometimes there'll be a lot more symptoms to sit with and feel. But the same with meditation and recovery is like just keep on being willing to sit. So like if if you're meditating, maybe whatever, like a daily practice, and some days it's really difficult and some days it's really easy. If you just keep coming back, and the same with recovery, if you just keep on being willing to feel what you need to feel, everything will pass, right? No matter how tough it feels for a couple of days, every experience comes and goes, the good ones and the bad ones. So to just remind yourself of that can be really helpful when it's really difficult. And then, just being willing to sit with it. And if it's not peaceful, it's not peaceful, like that's fine. But often it will be, like often just feeling into it can make a massive difference. And I was going to say something else, but I can't remember. You're welcome, Rosie. Cheers, Erin. Thank you so much for joining us and for bringing some great questions. I can't do these lives if people don't bring questions, so I'm grateful to everybody who joins in and gives me questions and is here to chat. So good luck to you, and I'm glad that this has been helpful. And it is evening here, so I will enjoy the rest of my evening. Dweller, you were in stealth mode there. I didn't know who you were. Anthony, have to change that in my mind. Anthony is Dweller. Glad to see you still here. So I think we'll maybe do some meditation to finish off. So if anybody has any more questions, feel free to pop them in. I'll answer a few more questions because I see I've gotten through everything here. So if anybody has anything else they want to say or ask, go for it. We can do a couple more questions and then maybe finish off with 10, 15 minutes of meditation. Hey, Valek, I'm not sure. Thanks for all the videos, really helpful. Could you talk a bit more about the DNRS? Did it help you? How does it work? I've had a lot of people ask me about that, and did it help? Yes, to an extent. So what I say about brain retraining programs was, I think it definitely played a role in my recovery. There was definitely a lot of things that helped with, but at the same time, I eventually didn't get me to fully recovered, and it was something I had to go past. Eventually let go of that, because that could have kept me stuck as well. I could have gotten stuck in this trying to force that process to work for me when I eventually had to go beyond it. So just to talk a bit more about it, it's what was really helpful about it was that it I've mentioned this a few times, but it helped to it changed some beliefs about the illness itself, and brought to surface how beliefs were keeping me stuck. So believing that this was some chronic illness that couldn't be fixed, and that it was just this mysterious thing in the body, and realizing the DNRS really focuses on the limbic system, which is the I think it's the emotional and the fear center in the brain, part of the brain that's responsible for that. How it's, it's gotten like through neuroplasticity, right? So like whatever we practice a lot, the brain gets better and better at doing, which really is a big factor in this whole chronic fatigue illness, is that our brain gets really good at creating these stressed out responses, and it learns these pathways that kind of get learned and become habituated. So the DNRS was really about like focusing on the brain aspects of like retraining the brain, right? They're all about like neuroplasticity and retraining the brain, which in my early stages of recovery, I think that was really helpful to get me out of some of my certain beliefs. Was like realizing, okay, like all of these thought patterns and stuff, that's what's keeping me stuck. And then it's like these exercises to try to retrain the brain or the nervous system to respond differently to symptoms or triggers or things that are seen as threats, right? So like we learn that pushing ourselves and symptoms and exercise is a threat. And then there's these fear-based responses, and then that brings on the cascade of symptoms and whatnot. So yeah, I think it did help me, and I read a few books around neuroplasticity and brain retraining and that kind of thing. And I read The Lightning Process. It's got like an introductory book, because that's another brain retraining thing I'd heard a lot about. So all of that definitely played a role in my recovery. And then I did the whole DNRS program, and then I was applying so what they do is there's a whole like video course, basically just like a whole bunch of videos you watch, and then there's practices that you do daily. And so then I started applying those practices, and there was good stuff that came out of it. But eventually I had to go past it because it was too rigid for me. So I definitely think it was helpful, but eventually what the problem for me was that it was too much still trying to control and fix, when what really worked for me in the end was realizing that it was my whole system of trying to control and fix that was causing me to resist certain things. So like what the DNRS addressed well was dealing with the resistance to symptoms and the beliefs about symptoms. So then you no longer, so you realize that, oh, resisting symptoms is what makes us worse. I'm going to retrain the brain to teach it that symptoms are safe and I can feel this and whatnot. And then what happens is you're not trying to control your response to symptoms. So for me, what started to happen is like resistance would form to like negative thoughts, so like, or fears of the symptoms. So like there'd be symptoms, and then the past patterns would be like to be scared of the symptoms and to push them away. And then DNRS was addressing that, but then it would be the thoughts of like, oh, I'm going to have a crash now. Like, okay, no, that's fine, I'm okay. But there was this resistance to these thoughts, like, oh, I mustn't experience fear. I mustn't have these thoughts. Like that's going to make things worse. So the resistance kind of shifted from the symptoms itself to the thoughts itself. So then the next thing for me was to let go of the brain retraining method, stop trying to control it, and that's when the more meditation. And I learned a lot of stuff from Angelo DeLulo about acceptance work, and that it's resistance in any form is the only problem. Like if you can just accept any thought, any sensation, any emotion, it's no longer a problem. It was the resistance that was causing that. So yeah, eventually it just became pure acceptance work, no longer trying to retrain the brain and trying to fix symptoms and fix the body and all of that. It became more just accept whatever comes up and working through that, being willing to feel. And then also what I found with a lot of the brain retraining stuff, and again, not only brain retraining, like positive thinking, positive psychology, that kind of thing, is there's a lot of inauthenticity in ourselves, and we're trying to bypass certain things that we don't want to feel. So I'm feeling good, I'm feeling strong, I'm feeling healthy, I'm happy, when we're not feeling that way, but we don't want to feel that. So then we're trying to retrain the brain to feel happier, we got to pretend we're happy and that kind of thing. And I did a lot of that, and maybe it helped me get out of a bit of a difficult, like difficult negative thinking patterns. But it's inauthentic, and it's difficult, and that shit that you don't want to feel is still going to be there. So again, that's why that didn't work entirely for me until I was completely authentic with myself. And like, if I'm feeling fear, sadness, loneliness, shame, guilt, any uncomfortable emotion, tired, whatever, just completely be willing to feel that. Don't try and pretend that it's not there, and just like radical authenticity with myself. So radical acceptance and radical authenticity of like, this is what is here right now. Can I accept that? And don't try and pretend it's something else. Like if it's fear, it's fear. Let it be there, and then work with that. So in a couple of my videos, I talk more specifically about working with difficult emotions and that kind of stuff. But yeah, that's my long answer to brain retraining, that kind of thing. Liam, the last few weeks I've found journaling really helpful to help structure my day and enforce positivity. Did you have experience journaling or something similar? Yeah, so journaling can be really helpful. Again, also just to, so I just kind of spoke about like trying to force positivity, and it can help a bit, but there's a lot of drawbacks to that. But just journaling like purely on how you're feeling can be a great way to get in touch with what you're actually feeling. And like I was just saying about authenticity, just to be authentic with what you're feeling in the moment. So yeah, journaling can be really helpful. I do recommend it. Yeah, if you're journaling and maybe you're not feeling great, you don't have to force yourself to just write positive shit. Just express what you're feeling. Like today is tough, but that's okay. And then you don't have to go down, because there'll be fear to that, especially if we've been practicing positive thinking. There can be fear to like, I can't. If I say today is tough and I'm really struggling, that can lead me down this whole negative spiral. But then just notice like, okay, there's fear now. What am I afraid of? That kind of thing. So just do that. And like you said, like, see, the thing is like when we're actually just willing to feel the negative shit, and it can be really relieving. Like you said, it releases the stress, because it's stressful when we're trying to fight it, right? So I need to feel positive. I need to feel this. If you're just authentic with like, yeah, I'm feeling negative. These are my negative thoughts. It's because we're pushing against it. So we're like, if we're having these thoughts and we're like resisting them, they're going to stick around and get progressively more uncomfortable. But if we're just willing to feel them, and journaling can be a great way to process them and just let it pass through, then it's such a relief. You're like, oh, okay, I can feel that. That's not really bothering me anymore. So yeah, just authenticity and a willingness to feel the uncomfortable stuff. It's like, it's really our own resistance to feeling uncomfortable emotions and sensations and thoughts that makes it so uncomfortable. And we've all just learned it. It's like a societal thing that you shouldn't feel that. But it's really such a powerful thing to just feel it. And it can be such a relief when you don't have to run and hide anymore. Yeah, there are a lot of things that I learned to do from the illness. That's why I say for me, this is the best thing that could ever happen to me. Like the stuff it forced me to work through, it needed to happen, and it was really difficult at times. But as you say, Liam, like you learn to work through your shit, and you learn to journal, which you maybe wouldn't have done before. So, and then meditate and learn to accept your emotions and whatever it is you need to do. This so much that we eventually start to do. Yeah, I did that a lot as well. We'll read back through the journal, because what's really helpful about that is that it reminds you that this will pass as well, right? So, seeing that there were in the past lots of negative days, lots of positive days, um, and as I said before, it can be so helpful to remind yourself that this isn't going to last forever. That there's ups and downs. It's a natural part of the process. So looking back and like, oh yeah, there's positive days as well. Um, yeah, that can be really helpful. So that absolutely, yeah. Okay, so final. Let's see, we're almost at 1 hour 50. So if there's any more questions, we can do one or two quick fire questions, and then I want to do. We can finish off with a 10-minute meditation for anybody who wants to sit. We can just sit for 10, 15 minutes. It can always be great to meditate with other people, just because it's a shared intention. Then often, if you're meditating on your own, it's much easier to stop when it feels uncomfortable. Whereas if you know other people are sitting as well, it's like, okay, I can sit for 10 minutes. Everyone's doing it. So that's what can be great about meditating. That's why I like to do these live meditations. It's a nice way to share the intention. So I'll give like 1 minute to see if anybody has any final questions. Otherwise, we'll do a meditation. Okay, cool. It doesn't look like there's any more questions. So we can do, I think, let's do a 15-minute meditation. So I'll set a timer on my phone, and then if anybody would like to join in, they can. We'll just sit for 15 minutes. When the timer goes, then we can stop. So I'll just say a couple of things. If anybody wants a focus for the meditation or something that can be helpful. So for me, the practice nowadays is kind of just a letting go and a surrendering acceptance kind of meditation. So of anything that I was carrying with me into this meditation. So any narrative from the day, from the moment before this, it's all gone. I can just drop it and notice that this presence that's here is like completely new. So I can just stop. I don't need to carry anything into this. Anything from the day, you can just leave it at the door. Come into silence. What is this presence like if I don't try to control it? All the time we're always trying to make things a certain way. Trying to control our lives. Trying to be this, trying to be that. Trying to not be this, trying to not be that. What if I just stop trying and just surrender to the silence or the presence and just sit with this, and whatever this is, whatever's here, don't try to fix it. Don't try to manage it. Just be. And if there's fixing or managing, then that's fine. That's what's happening. Just don't add another layer onto that. Just what happens if you let the moment unfold exactly as it does, without any hidden agenda of how it should be? What if you just let it be just what it wants to be? Whatever that is okay. If there's tension in the body, just let that be there. If there's thoughts in the mind, that's okay. Let the thoughts be there. There's no need to push and pull. Just give in to this surrender of presence. It's just happening on its own. Let the manager rest. Let the one who's trying to pick and choose experience, let it rest. Let experience just be itself. And just sit with this. There's no right or wrong in meditation. There's no such thing as a wrong meditation. There's just what's happening. There's just this moment. And it's already here. So why fight it? Just let it be. Allow yourself to be stopped. Allow the mind to rest. And if there's thoughts, that's fine. Allow the thoughts to be there. There's nothing you need to do anymore. Just feel what's here. Let go of past and future thoughts. Let go of anything to do with the past. The past is gone. There's just this. Just this. And whatever this is fine. Just let attention go where it goes. It's in sensation, and it's in sensation. If it's in thought, it's in thought. If there's judgment, there's judgment. Just let it go. There's no need to manage. Can you feel into awareness itself? Maybe that leads to thoughts, that's fine. And you just let attention rest wherever it does. Notice that everything just comes and goes. Sounds arise, and then the instant they arise, the sound is different. sensations pass, constantly changing. Thoughts come and go. Experience constantly on the move. But what's always here? What's noticing that experience? That sense of the me. Can you just rest attention there? If that doesn't make sense, that's fine. Just notice that's what's happening. What happens if you just let go? And just keep letting go. Don't need labels. Don't need to label what's happening. It's all happening on its own. And as we bring this formal meditation practice to a close, see if you can touch into this throughout your day. So get up and carry on in our lives and whatever it is we need to do. See if you can just touch into this presence. Just take a moment every now and then. What's always here? What aspect of experience is the same, whether you're sitting on the mat meditating for long periods of time and finding peace? What part of experience is exactly the same in the chaotic environment? See if you can touch into that, something that's unchanged, no matter what's happening externally. Some part of experience is unchanged. You can call it the awareness or the consciousness that all of this is happening in, can be touched into at any moment. It's just remember that can always take a moment to drop the momentum of the last moment and just notice the brand new presence of each moment. All right. That was ended up being a guided meditation. Hopefully that was helpful. So I think we're going to wrap it up there. Thanks for everybody that joined the live. It was great to have you guys asking your questions, and for any of you that joined for the meditation at the end. It was nice to feel into the present moment with you. And all the best. And as I said, just remember, you can at any moment just touch into some presence. I'll post this on the live, under the live tab. So if anybody's joined late and you want to go back and watch, there was a lot of good stuff that we covered, a lot of good questions. So yeah, if you want to go watch through it, if you want to join us for the guided meditation at the end, you can go watch this. All right, thank you guys. Great being live with you.